Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this last meeting to constrain our project list. And I don't know that we have anyone that showed up for in person. I did forget to remove that part of the agenda, but I know the email and everything else said via Zoom today. So we do have it set up though, if anyone's on their way to the OTO offices. Really just the only thing we had on the agenda today was to finalize that constrained project list. So I will just pull that up and switch on over to that. Did anyone have any comments about what I emailed out? I will note just a few quick updates. I spoke with Willard on Friday, and Brad, I'm glad you're on this call, but I don't know if Randy filled you in. We ended up doing just a little bit of swapping of Willard's projects as far as the constraint list goes. Hughes Road, which would be a proposed road, is not currently on the functional classification system maps. And so we switched that one to be unconstrained. And now both Miller Road projects are listed as constrained. And then after meeting with the city of Battlefield, and I know at our last meeting we had talked about not including anything for the FF corridor on the constrained list until we did the study. We thought it would at least be prudent to include a generic project for the, here it is, Route FF intersection improvements. So not necessarily calling out any specific intersections, but putting $3 million in 2032 for some sort of potential improvement. And then the city of Springfield did provide me with some updates as to what they plan to spend, or what they're planning not to spend federal funds on. And so I've marked through those projects, and we will probably remove those also from the unconstrained list as well. We just won't include them in this list. So those are the only changes I believe that I have made since I emailed this list out. It does leave us with a little bit of funding. Let's see, our total amount here is $27 million in that last time band. And just a note that when we do inflate, let's say a project that has current funding all the way out to that time frame, it pretty much does double it. So just FYI on that. That leaves us a little bit of money to make amendments to the plan at any future date. But that said, this is just a proposal, and I am open to discussing any adjustments. Surely somebody has something to say, or anything you want me to focus in on in particular.
Hey, Natasha, if nobody's going to ask a question, I'll jump in.
Okay.
Hey, this is just for my education and knowledge. On the signal, is the ITS the same as the signal replacement program? Is that, or I'm sorry, ITS operations and management? Could you tell me again what that is?
Sure. So that generally covers our management of the TMC, the Traffic Management Center, that Springfield and MoDOT partner on for the region. The signal replacement program is just that. It's to update, signals as they are aging out. Tom or Frank, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
So on the ITS stuff, does any of that impact Willard, or does that come out this way, or is that? Or is that just trying to get a feel for
Brad,
what?
I don't think it does right now, but I think the plan is to extend something out to Willard with the traffic cameras, like a permanent traffic camera, that kind of thing.
Okay. I think that's kind of what I was, if that was a piece of that, I was kind of curious about that, trying to understand how we could get some of those traffic cameras. So I can follow up offline on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Brad. Any other comments on the list?
Tasha, I got a quick question for
Sure.
you. So we've got a few projects, and the question was whether they need to be listed or not. So
Okay.
one is the improvements to LeCompte. We're currently in the process of applying for a grant, ADH grant for that, and whether we get that grant or not is going to depend on how viable the project is anytime soon. So I guess the first question would be if we need to include that, if we need to list that project, because if we do get the grant, that would introduce the federal funds to it.
Okay. Now the construction year is not necessarily, more recent, but we do have a LeCompte road capacity improvements. There's no extent listed, and we do have that constrained.
Okay, perfect. I just missed that one. And maybe we've got these, I may have missed these other two as well, because one we've got is the Republic Road bridge over James River Freeway. And then the other thing that Dan had brought up was the future interchange at Gasconade.
Okay, let me see. I know they are both on here. I am thinking they are both unconstrained at this point in time. There's the interchange.
Okay.
Yeah, they are on the list. They are both unconstrained. And I think kind of one, I don't have a cost, which I will need later anyway, regardless of constrained or unconstrained. If you have an estimated cost for that Republic Road Bridge. But at this point in time and not knowing, what developer funds or what that's going to look like on that Gasconade interchange, we just didn't see the room at this point in time to constrain that project.
Yeah, gotcha. And does that also include, because I think one of the confusing parts of the questions whether or not that was going to be, that needed to be in conjunction with another interchange over on 60, but
okay. We also unconstrained the Farm Road 189 interchange.
yes.
That is something, it was in the list that I sent out, but since our last meeting, we did separate just to be able to make the constrained list more feasible. We did separate the interchange from the freeway improvements on 60. Let me just narrow that list down. And split that into kind of $20 million for the freeway improvements and $20 million for that interchange. Also knowing that that might have some developer driven funds behind it, and revisiting that basically when that conversation's ready to happen.
Okay, now that answers my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and we can make any changes to this list, but that potentially means that we're probably going to have to pull something else off, which is fine. We can have that conversation. But yeah. Was anyone curious about any other particular projects?
Natasha, I'm just curious. You said there was some funding left over for the constrained list. Are you looking for candidates to move from unconstrained to constrained, or do you think this is a good proposal and we just need to verify that this is the good plan?
I would rather just propose it and leave a little bit of funding available to be able to make changes during the plan's time frame. Otherwise, it becomes really difficult to move that one project that perhaps needed to get moved from the unconstrained to the constrained list.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if we do make changes, I'd like to make sure that we still, either maybe it's just not a big project and we're fine, or that we find another project to trade off with. I will add, we did try to line up projects with, you'll see occasionally I've got a few things that are highlighted with green here in the construction year. We did try to line up those years where we could with resurfacing. And so we did try to take that into account, or other projects that we knew maybe might be happening due to a cost share application or that sort of thing. But I think at the end of the day, that year of constructions, can be a little bit more fluid. It just helps us establish the inflation factor for that project. Well, does anyone want to make a recommendation that this perhaps is the list then?
Hey, Natasha, just a quick
Yeah.
question. Did we get all the MoDOT unfunded needs tier 1 in the constraint list?
As far as I know, we did.
Okay. It looked like we did. I just wanted to double check that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I tried to, let's see, a couple of these have multiple notes. Yeah, so anything with this comment of U and L is from the unfunded needs list. I think this was just the phase 3 of that Kansas Expressway. And since we don't really have those further identified, I think we decided that one was probably okay. This was the portion north of Norton. Let's see. This was the interchange at 189, but everything else is constrained.
Okay.
And so our plan is after today to take this list and send it over to Olson to do a 2045 plan model run. And they'll take into account all of our various capacity improvements and changes that we're recommending here. And we'll kind of get to see the impact of this constrained list. I know Republic wasn't able to make the call, but they didn't indicate any other changes. There's anything else anyone wants to discuss?
You get the tabs to the transit projects. We're going to approve those today too.
Yeah, we can talk about that next. I just wanted us to be sure to have a chance to focus on this so we can get it to the to Olson for the model run.
So we're just going to approve Road and Bridge today, and then the other modes can wait.
Yeah, we'll have a discussion. I don't know that there's a lot to really focus on. It's kind of just the typical expenses that city utilities and our 5310 has every year. So I'll go over that. I don't know that there's a lot to really dig into on that.
I'm not sure if this is a Natasha question or a Frank question. I'm assuming these funds include our safety funds, and have we accounted for those specifically? I know we usually don't have a safety plan that's that far out.
Yeah, our projections do include, I guess, the safety funding that's in this MoDOT directed revenue category. We consulted, what was in that safety plan and, kind of looking at ourselves at where we had safety concerns.
I think we put specific projects in where we knew them, where we knew specific locations for the tip, but the safety improvement program is just a pot of funds in the future, I think, Natasha, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and we have the safety improvement program here.
Okay, I couldn't remember where it was showing up on this stuff. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I do want to thank everyone for helping us out with this whole process and developing the projects and all the details and everything. For the most part, we were able to get through those highest scoring projects and then all of those unfunded needs lists that we've been putting together through our STIP prioritization process. So I just want to thank each of the communities too for helping narrow this list down. So with that, if there is no other conversation, I would entertain a recommendation that this be our constrained list for the plan.
I recommend that we use this constrained list for the plan.
Thank you, John. Does anyone want to second that?
Natasha, this is Cole. I'll second that.
Thank you. And I think with the sunshine rules for a virtual meeting, I think we do need to do a roll call of who is on the call for approving this. And so I will just go down the list. Let's see. So Tom Dancy. How do you vote?
Yes.
Frank Miller.
Yes.
Okay. John Montgomery.
Yes.
Jeff Roussel.
Yes.
Matt Crawford.
Yes.
Chad Zickafoose.
Yes.
Randy Fisher.
Yes.
Brad Gray.
Yes.
Cole Pruitt.
Yes.
Zeke Hall.
Yes.
Alex Woodson.
Yes.
Chris Boone.
Yes.
Beth Scheller.
Yes.
and Martin Google.
Yes.
Okay, is there anyone I missed? All right, well, thank you, everyone. We have a constrained list, so that is great. I will go over transit. I believe we talked a little bit about the transit projections at a prior meeting. We have a couple of different funding sources. The FTA 5307, which is a direct allocation to city utilities for operations, security, and planning. 5310 funding, which covers both our human service agency vehicles as well as some above and beyond ADA improvements that city utilities sponsors. And then 5339 funding, which is bus and bus facilities. City utilities provides a local share to supplement operations and match, and I would say it's probably more than match for the 5307 funds when you look at what they contribute as far as that local funding. There is funding that city utilities receives from the state of Missouri and for Medicaid. And then this other local agencies amount is the match required for those, that 5310 portion going towards human service agency vehicles. And so everything in the first 4 years matches our tip. And then after that, we've grown most things by 2%. That seems to be consistent with what we've seen in transportation bills and whatnot so far. And then again, we just kind of did the math to make that a match for the 5310. But then the city utilities funding, their local share is just grown by 1%. They have been able to kind of hold that more steady over time. And so at the end of the day, that puts about $351 million available for transit as far as those kind of federal funds and local share goes. And so the projects that we show, kind of like we did with the road projects, we have the tip in these first 4 years. There is a paratransit bus replacement and a fixed route bus replacement that we do not currently have programmed, and so those are added in. And then beyond that, it's the operating expenses, preventative maintenance, planning, security, and ADA enhancements that city utilities provides. There is a little bit of additional funding for shelters, signs, and amenities, ITS, and then our human service vehicles. And so that really doesn't end up leaving a whole lot of funding available for anything beyond just providing service. And so you can see that leaves kind of just a balance over time of $3.4 million. And again, I think like our roadway projects, it gives us some room to make adjustments in the future if necessary. City utilities does have additional on their unconstrained list, and I can always pull that up. But looking at the potential for additional fixed route bus replacements and electrification. Make sure I'm sharing the new screen. So showing electric buses in future years, and in discussing this with Brandy, the thought is that the cost of those buses will go down over time, so not necessarily to inflate that in the future. Some additional paratransit buses, potential, and again, this is unconstrained. These are the things that we would have to find additional funding for, but potential trolley service, shelters that are a little above and beyond what's done now, kind of referring to those as placemaking shelters, and then accounting for, that 2012 route study additional costs to implement that service. And so those would be all the things that currently do not have funding identified. Go back to the screen. Brandy or Matt, do you want to provide any comments on this?
I think Matt may have jumped off. So
Okay.
No additional comments. Happy to answer any questions, but kind of like Natasha said, we just programmed basically what it costs to operate our system day to day, and then kind of those above and beyond items are on the other list that Natasha had pulled up, and those are things that are on our radar, but like she said, we'd had to identify some major additional funding. So those are just kind of future plans. We do plan to continue to transition to electric buses. We received our first electric bus 2 Fridays ago, I believe, and we're going to receive the second one this coming Friday. So they will be in service in the fall. We do plan to try to swap out diesel buses for electric going forward, as long as we get the performance that we need out of these. So that's kind of a discussion to be continued.
Yeah, and at this point, MSU is still not, seeking these particular federal funds. And should that change, I think these descriptions are also general enough that we'd be able to support additional projects throughout our region. And again, we can always revisit this again should any of those situations change. And I will add, or Andy, if you can describe a little bit of the additional, work that OATS is doing. We did provide OATS a little bit of 5307 funding just from the kind of the extra money that we received via the COVID funding. It was kind of very small, and I think there were limitations on how that could be distributed. But I don't know in the future that they would, that would be a different discussion. But Andy, do you want to talk about some of the new service OATS has provided?
Yeah, I can try to touch on it some. OATS, at least here in the Southwest District, or in their Southwest District, has been working hard to partner with the senior tax boards and disabled tax boards in all of the counties to kind of help supplement services. They've also been partnering with the Department of Mental Health to establish some transportation rates for providing transportation for community employment, employment kind of outside of the sheltered workshops. And so by combining some of the various FTA sources, the tax board and the DMH, they've been able to add several different services from the surrounding communities into Springfield. I know he's working towards getting some regular routes from like Buffalo to Springfield, Bolivar to Springfield, and then I think Nixon, Ozark up, maybe Republic. I can't remember where all DMH was seeing that need, but they were working towards trying to get that service set up. So if there's a partner opportunity, OATS has been capitalizing on it and trying to combine funding sources. So.
Natasha, I have a question on the projections tab. Right there in 2025, it looks like CU is having to really jump its local share. Is there a story behind that?
Brandy, is this because that CRISA funding that was supplementing?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So in 25, the CU local share goes from 7 million to 9.5 million. Frank? was wondering about that jump.
Okay, so sometimes anything beyond the match is also included in that city utilities local share. So I believe in 2025, we have a fixed route bus purchase planned, and the 5339 funding doesn't cover all of that. As we saw before, the electric buses with the bus plus the charging equipment is about $1 million a bus right now, and we only get about 300,000 a year in 5339. So CU would absorb the difference.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then we did this on the roadway projects too. But for the tip, we always have a prior year funding that comes in, and it's usually a lot of rolled over projects and different things. And so we have that as well here. And so I think that's where that CRISA funding and kind of previously unused, maybe unawarded 5310 vehicle funding comes in as well. So are there any questions or requests for changes in our consideration on the transit side? Well, if everyone would feel comfortable with it, I would go ahead and take a motion to approve this list as well.
So moved.
Thank you, Tom. Can I get a second?
I'll second. This is Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, and we'll just go through the list again. I know we've lost a few people here, but
Hey, Natasha, just a
yeah,
quick question.
sure.
I just noticed that this wasn't on the agenda. So, or was it on the agenda just under their constrained list?
Yeah, just under the constrained list.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So Tom
Yes.
and Frank,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Chad,
Yes.
Brandy,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Pruitt, Cole,
Yes.
Zeke,
Yes.
Alex, Alex. Okay, Chris,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Jeremy.
Yes.
Just saw you hop on. Did you have any questions, Jeremy, regarding, I'm
Yeah.
not sure quite when you joined, but
No, I was, Natasha, I was listening and kind of following along, and then I joined in with my audio here. But I think I went through the packet. I think we're good on voting on this. I did miss a few minutes of it, so if you're not comfortable with me voting on it, I can understand that too. So.
no, you're fine. And then we did go ahead and approve the roadways constrained list. But if you had any questions, I want to make sure that you have a chance to ask them while we're here.
Yeah, not at this time. I don't have any
Okay.
questions.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you everyone again for helping us kind of get through this part. This is always, I think, one of the more challenging parts of putting the plan together. So that's great. We were able to get all of this together. We do have our next meeting scheduled for the 22nd. And so that's going back to our Thursday timeframe. And so if you're not able to make it, just let me know. But hopefully otherwise we will see you there. And anything else anyone wants to talk about before we adjourn for the day? Kirk, I see you just hopped on. Do you have any questions about anything? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will see you on the 22nd.